When it comes to chicken, I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph's has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
By the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
It was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph JAFFE and Corona TV.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to Corona TV. I apologize about my desk behind me, but I'm just so disorganized. In reality, my actual desk doesn't look very different from this desk. And why is my desk untidy? Well, you're just going to have to wait to find out when I have the grand return of Carla Johnson back in the Corona TV studio. So what did you think about the new intro? This one? That one, that is courtesy of Seth Sparks, one of the regular viewers of Corona TV. He's been a part of the show probably for as long as Carla Johnson has been as well. And he put that together for me. And so, I wanted to show it to you. Why not? I thought it was pretty awesome. Well, let's talk about fat blogging. 180.7 pounds, down from 184.1. The intermittent fasting is working. The less Peloton time is working. The 1 glass of red wine is working. Let's leave it at that and keep moving forward. Let's talk about JAFFE coins and Corona currency. I have to tell you, I should say cryptocurrency. I have to tell you, by the way, first of all, Mr. Bob Farnham, looks like a great show again. Thank you for watching on YouTube. You need to watch on YouTube because it's not on Facebook. It's not on Facebook anymore. We're done. We're finished. I've turned my back on Facebook. Well, not really, because right now it's actually on my author speaker page on Facebook, but I've taken it off the main page just for a while, just to see what happens. There's Steve Garfield. He has figured out how to still watch on Facebook. Come on, Steve, get onto YouTube. I'm sharing it on Facebook, but just playing around with things because just want to see whether the feed is actually getting in front of people. And it seems to have been buried a little bit as well through the algorithm. So yeah, it's a little bit of a live experiment. But anyway, let's get back to JAFFE coins for a moment. Something actually kind of cool happened, which is I was in a room on Clubhouse. And while I was in a room, quite a bit of JAFFE coin was actually purchased, and it got my attention. And it's actually a way to get creators' attention right now. So I want to take this time, as I said, to give Rebecca Borges a bit of a shout out, not just a shout out, but a hell of a shout out, a super sized shout out. Let me tell you a little bit about her. A multi-passionate creative entrepreneur and community builder, Rebecca Borges has made it her mission to reconnect people to the magic and beauty of nature. In merging her 25 plus years of experience in art and design with her natural ability to connect people, she has found her sweet spot. Born out of her own feelings of isolation and disconnection, she sought to create a sense of belonging in this world. in developing, then leading a supportive community of women through Fem City and reconnecting herself to nature, she found the missing links and a reminder of her deep love of nature cultivated in her youth as a young girl from a sleepy beach town in Massachusetts. I'm getting all choked up. Contact her on Instagram. She's Rebecca Borges 1. What else? You can also contact her on Live Plant Happy or Live Plant Happy. On Clubhouse, she's Rebecca Borges, and you can find out her website is planthappy.com. That is a super-sized shout-out, and it's what happens when you send crypto, when you send JAFFE coin to me. It is an experiment, and it's just to show you how these kinds of little connections can happen. It is also part of the monetization of the creator economy. And so it's something that I hope you will embrace, and I hope you will lean into it. And I hope, quite frankly, that you'll send me some JAFFE coin as well. But let's talk about a few other things. Let's talk about Clubhouse. 4 rooms in Clubhouse this week, including the after show today with Carla Johnson. Today, I will do my weekly Brands in Clubhouse room. Tomorrow, my weekly Pivot Your Brand, Career, or Life. And something actually very, very exciting. At 3 p.m. tomorrow, we will welcome the brands to Clubhouse officially. I'm actually doing a closed door session with marketers. And then afterwards, we're going to invite as many of them as have Clubhouse invites to actually come in and continue the conversation with us. So you're going to see and hear from Scott Monty and Jeremiah Oyang and Brian Fanzo, Richie Glassberg, even Bomani X might be making a little bit of a cameo as well. So come and join us tomorrow. A lot to look forward to, no doubt. But here is what we really need to focus on today. It is International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day. It is a happy day for everyone on this planet except Burger King UK. More on that in my soliloquy and when Carla comes on the show. But first, just a little reminder, this Friday, you will hear from Trisha Ben, David Omana, Christina Di Giacomo, and Brian Kramer, Keith Reynolds-Jennings tomorrow. I think Liz Plank has had to postpone, and we're busy working on a fantastic replacement, and I will announce that, I guess, later today or tomorrow. And then at a special time, Julia McCoy on Thursday. We're just mixing everything up this week, and why not? But one, the more things change, the more they stay the same. One constant is Carla Johnson. She is a constant when it comes to her consummate professionalism, her track record, her staying power, and the fact that she has just published her 10th book. And we're here today to celebrate her and celebrate her new book. Let's do some birthdays before we get into it. Mr. Adam Breutman, he's still too young. Galia Gluckman, Luann Mandelstam, Jorn Socket. Why do I not pronounce that correctly? I only did work with him at Anheuser-Busch InBev. My niece, Leah Hoff. My cousin, Jason Kaplan. My friend, Janet Zev. Lots of people celebrating birthdays in my family. And then on today, I was going to say on Sunday, but no, today, Adam Chater, used to work with him, Jeff Ziv. And across LinkedIn, so many people, so little time. Patrick Johnson, Jody Green, Step Morgan, Josh Beriano, Jenny Chen, Brian Crum, Florence Ncho. Happy birthday, everybody. Have a great day. Well, let's get into our seated soliloquy. And today, the seated soliloquy is called Overcome with Gum. But before we get into that soliloquy, I just want to see some of the comments. There seem to be quite a number of comments. Mr. Steve Garfield finally figured out how to make it there. Mr. Tom Morris is here. Found you here. You can run, but you can't hide. The long trek from Facebook got me there. Who else is there? Mr. Chip Griffin is there. Stephen Rubin, one of our regulars. David Libby. I'm celebrating the 3 women in this house. Wonderful. We should celebrate all the women in our houses, our respective houses. Glenn is here. Glenn Stran, the CH, as in Clubhouse, is actually quiet. Who else is here? Did I get to all of you? I certainly hope I did. Let's get into the seated soliloquy. Why are people dumb? Hang on. Let me rephrase that. Why do smart people act dumb? Why do smart people make dumb decisions? I've mentioned this quote many times in the past. Legendary ad critic Bob Garfield would say, the ad business is filled with smart people making dumb decisions. I've adapted that for my Built to Suck thesis along the lines of, we're all smart, we're all educated, so why, when we walk into our corporate walls, do we get overcome with dumb? Of course, it's not limited to working for a large corporation. It happens as much in our personal lives and in our relationships. Quite frankly, we could work for a startup and it could happen. So what gives? For me, and I'm no psychologist, nor do I play one on TV or streaming TV, it's not actually that hard to decode. It's a lethal and toxic cocktail involving the following ingredients: hubris, arrogance, pride, ego, narcissism mixed together with elements of shame, denial, and oftentimes ignorance, and sometimes a little bit of innocence. Sadly, many of the behavior traits above are not that uncommon, nor necessarily that difficult to understand or comprehend. What fascinates me more is the self-awareness or the lack thereof during these brain fart moments, and moreover, what remedies are taken both immediately and to avoid said moments of fart in the brain in the future. We're all human. We all make mistakes. In fact, as the saying goes, to err is human, forgive divine. But doubling down on stupidity, that is just a fool me twice, shame on me moment. On International Women's Day, my guest and I, Carla Johnson, will discuss the absolute, insert incredulous word here, tweet from Burger King UK, not 24 hours after the monarchy took a punch to the nether regions, courtesy of Meghan, Harry, and Oprah. Look, it's easy to point a finger and decry idiocy. Many people suffer self-inflicted wounds just by opening their mouths. Yes, members of government, we're looking straight at you right about now. What's much more difficult and worth taking the time to process is to understand why people make dumb decisions. And when they do and are made aware of it, why it's so hard to pull the plug, cut their losses, and hopefully escape with the ability to live to fight another day. For what it's worth, sometimes the ability just to say, I'm sorry, is enough, or at least a start, a head start. But that would require admitting imperfection, which is just not regal enough, I suppose. Well, now it's time to bring on someone who is not part of the elitist monarchy, but of the people, for the people, by the people, and connected to the people. And of course, I'm talking about Carla Johnson. Carla Johnson is a world-renowned storyteller, an entertaining speaker, I can attest to that, and a prolific author, 10 times, 10x. Having lived, worked, and studied on 5 continents, she's partnered with top brands and conferences to train thousands of people how to rethink the work that they do and the impact they can have. Her visionary expertise has inspired and equipped leaders at all levels to embrace change, welcome new ideas, and transform their business. Her work with Fortune 500 brands served as the foundation for many of her books, and her 10th, Rethink Innovation, busts the myth that innovation is something that requires a specific degree or special training. Her goal, it's an ambitious one, is to teach 1 million people how to become innovative thinkers by 2025. Let's see how many she's already trained and what her progress report looks like. Carla Johnson, welcome back to Corona TV.
Thank you, and happy Monday, Joseph. I tell you, I'd like to speak with you every Monday morning because I'm feeling really good about myself now, overhearing what you had to say about me. So thank you.
You can come back every single Monday, really. I mean, I'm here every Monday. I got nowhere to be and nowhere to go, and yet
no travel plans.
Not yet, and yet there's nowhere I'd rather be, and no one I'd rather be with than you. So
you're very kind, very kind.
Welcome back. You were guest number 16. It kind of makes me a little emotional. I mean, because tomorrow's guest is 216. Can you believe that?
Wow. And I do remember that first time I was on your show. It seems forever ago, and also like it was just last month.
That's why it's kind of emotional. It's emotional because it's March 8th. I remember finding out about, when I found out my wife had COVID, it was March 11th. It's like almost a year ago. And in a way, I look at how far I've come and how far we've come on many levels, you and me, humanity, society, this country, and on other levels, we haven't come. We're stuck on other levels too. So it's like a purgatory in a way, which is it's a manic depressive. It's still our lives are like that. I think
a little bit of Groundhog Day every day for a year.
I'm telling you, and like, how do we get back to normal? I don't even know. Are you? I mean, we all say we want it, but are you psychologically ready to get back to whatever normal is?
It's kind of funny. I think the good thing about it is that I think everybody's going to ease into whatever normal is. But I'm a spontaneous, adventurous soul by nature. But I even find myself being much more cautious. And, when I get in an airplane for the first time when I don't have to wear a mask, I'm thinking, I may just anyway. It's been interesting for my own self-awareness to see how the necessity of behavior and some of these behaviors that we don't have control over will have a long-term effect on how I approach socialization and gathering. And I mean, I'm an ambivert, but I sure need to feed that extrovert side, but I'm still just careful and kind of curious to see how people will start rolling back together and in events and gatherings of any size.
So an ambivert means that you eat both meat and plants, right?
And potatoes. Eat meat and potatoes.
And potatoes. Well, before we go further, happy International Women's Day. It is a day to celebrate and a day to really be, I think, joyous. And so I just want to wish you, being a woman, but also being a human, may we all come together and I feel like this sense of buoyancy and joy for the most part across the board.
That's good. And thank you very much. I think it's an important month because it's Women's Month this month, and to have a specific day to celebrate all that women have contributed. But I do think that we are in the midst of a time where we're certainly not going to relegate it to just a single day or even a single month. I think there's so many things that are going on and a recognition of the new perspective that women bring to all different areas of our life that I think is just going to start to become a part of the new normal of what we see and how we look at business and life and conduct ourselves and expectations of business. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. And I think that right there is a huge thing to ccelebrate.
By the way, Chip says, what if you eat only potatoes? Then you would be a potato-vert. I don't know what it is, but Tom actually says another ambivert here, although I didn't know the word before now. Really, I'm surprised he didn't know that. So an ambivert is I think the actual definition is both introverted and extroverted at different times. So like for me, I've been using the phrase that I'm an extroverted introvert. Mm-hmm. People might perceive me and see me as being more extroverted, and yet I have a lot of introverted tendencies. One of the classic examples is I'll go to a party and be the life of the party, or at least be in it. Not needing to be the center of attention, but being in it, being boisterous and loud. And then at one point, it's like that light bulb above me just shatters, and I just want to get the hell away from humans. It's like an allergic reaction to the
Yeah,
same
it's like,
people that
okay, I'm done.
yeah, and no, but seriously, it's like it's very much like George Costanza's like, come on, it's very sudden and very jarring.
And I even find it the other way too, where I'm fine being alone, and then all of a sudden I gotta have my people. I gotta have a lot of them.
So, by the way, Glenn is decrying the fact that his JAFFE coin is declining today. Don't worry about it, Glenn. Do not look at cryptocurrency on a minute by minute, on a hourly by hourly, or even a day by day basis, because it is very volatile. But I appreciate the fact that you bought some JAFFE coin. One thing, by the way, speaking of getting back to normal, is I think the CDC just announced, like minutes before the show went live, that if you've been fully vaccinated now with both doses, if it's a 2-dose, you can actually start to you can be indoors without wearing a mask.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that. That's great news. It's great news.
Now, of course, that's going to be very interesting because I'm sure there are many people that are going to be indoors not wearing a mask that haven't been vaccinated, but that's another story for another.
Yeah, depending on what state you're in.
Exactly.
In a number of definitions of state, I guess.
in the virtual state of Corona TV, we are protected and unmasked, but that's only because of this beautiful little bubble that we have. So, Carla Johnson, when you came on the show, there were many things that weren't a part of the show, like a quote of the day or even the soliloquy. A lot of it is new. One of the things that I think is new is fun facts, like learning about Carla Johnson, the deep, the dark, the sordid past in history. There's not too much that's sordid about you.
That actually is, yep, that's me right there. Actually, I think you did me a very kindness there.
So that because normally it would be more messy.
Yes. So, and I think the background picture of your desk is probably very similar to my office on most days.
So I wonder. So I guess what is the bridge between this idea of, first of all, why do people perceive you to be organized? Like, why would someone perceive someone to be organized? Like, maybe they would perceive me to be disorganized because of this disheveled monstrosity of a beard and the fact that there's no, like, I don't know, there's appearance. Is appearance connected to the perception of organization? Maybe
it could be. Like, I think of you as a very organized person because of your ability to constantly produce, in this case, content at a high level of quality. And I know you can't do that unless you are organized. So I perceive you as being an organized person, but I do know you're a pretty right-brain thinker. And you may be like me, where you need the processes and systems in place to help you compensate for maybe not normally being naturally organized. Because I know that's the case with me, is that I have to have systems, habits, procedures. Otherwise, the wheels fall off the bus like crazy.
I have actually a system, a real system, which I call organized chaos, which is I kind of have a good idea where everything is, and yet it just, to the untrained eye, it looks like an absolute mess. But I kind of like, it's almost like this mental ability to retrace my steps and figure out where things are. Sometimes it completely backfires, like completely misplacing my naturalization certificate when I became a citizen of this country. And by the way, fun fact, it costs $555 to get a new certificate of naturalization. $555.
It sounds like kind of a random number, but it's one that's easily memorable. I bet you don't forget where you put it again.
According to Organized Chaos, I have a fairly good idea.
The general vicinity.
But I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know whether it's like 3D printed on diamonds or platinum but anyway. But that was weird. It was like, surely it would be like $60 and just like, hit the PDF print button.
Exactly.
I don't know. There must be a watermark or something weird going on there. But anyway, enough about Organized Chaos. And let's talk about organized chaos in the form of this Burger King debacle that is going on as we speak. I felt like I had to bring this up with you because it is International Women's Day. And for those of you that aren't following, let me just set the scene. Burger King UK decides to do a little bit of link baiting, I guess, and tweets, "Women belong in the kitchen." Yes, yes, you heard that right. At 4:01 this morning. And then, of course, below that, I guess the comments were, if they want to, of course, yet only 20% of chefs are women. We're on a mission to change the gender ratio in the restaurant industry by empowering female employees with the opportunity to pursue a culinary career. We are proud to be launching a new scholarship program which will help female Burger King employees pursue their culinary dreams. It is not going very well, as evidenced by the pixelated Colonel saying the best time to delete this post was immediately after posting it. The second best time is now. And Carla, where it gets really interesting is they're not doing it. They're doubling down on it. And then look at the response in the middle column at the bottom. Why would we delete a tweet that's drawing attention to a huge lack of female representation in our industry? We thought you'd be on board with us as well. We've launched a scholarship to help more of our female employees the chance to pursue a culinary career. And then, of course, on the right, you can actually see people saying, hey, listen, here's what's going on if you really needed the explanation, which is you're using sexist remarks as bait, which is a dumb idea, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think about this? Because clearly there is something going on that's actually good, right? What they're doing, but the way that they've gone about this and the arrogance and the stubbornness, it's in 2021, it's breathtaking.
I think this is the perfect example of a company trying to pander to something that's making headlines already right now. And Katie Martell, she does a tremendous job of talking about this and calling out brands that are doing this. And she's been working on a documentary for some time about this tendency of brands and what she calls pandemonium. And I think this example from Burger King couldn't be a more apropos one, because they think they're being funny and they are completely tone deaf and completely ignorant and stubborn, bullheaded, and everything else that you can put behind that ignorance of what it is that they're doing. Now, at the root of it, if they are sincere about trying to adjust that balance of women who are chefs, they certainly could have presented it in a much different light than taking something that is a very sexist stereotype of women and using that to push their mission. If you think about, they talk about, line cooks, maybe it's, we believe women belong at the head of the line. It's the same kind of sentiment, but it's a completely different impression and lasting emotion that comes with it. But what they're doing now, and especially by doubling down, is just really, really distasteful. And again, it just shows their ignorance about what it is they think they're trying to do. And it's just going, the more they dig their heels in, the more it's going to hurt them.
Yeah, so what I've been doing is basically tweeting at them every hour, basically going 6.5 hours of dumb, 7.5 hours of dumb.
Good for you.
and counting, but and you're so right. I mean, they could have even just tweaked it to have said, if you thought women belonged in the kitchen, ... I mean, so like even that would have at least been better, but still is link baiting. And I just think, why on earth would a brand need to link bait when you've actually got something positive to say and to contribute? I can't imagine. I mean, listen, I've been writing about this stuff and blogging about this stuff since 2005, and writing Join the Conversation in 2007, and just looking at these case studies, thinking, when will they ever learn? Why don't they ever learn? I can't fathom.
Well, and I think it's to your point, like the people aren't listening. They're so brand driven and ego driven and wanting to force their point of view and apparently completely the humor that doesn't have any tact or empathy or compassion or anything to the audience. They're just trying to push that, and they're functioning in a bubble that's insensitive to start with at best. And that's what makes me, I mean, I haven't even looked into the scholarship, but it's such a secondary part of the conversation that they've generated now and forced upon people that I doubt that the the scholarship and the goals that they had because of it will ever be fully realized because of how much they've alienated their, broader than their main audience because of how they've approached this.
There's also, and we'll create a nice little bridge to the new book as well, which is they probably thought they were being creative. They probably thought they were being innovative. They probably would decry the fact that they were maybe experimenting but before we get there, I think it warrants our ability to talk about why are people so proud? Why should a brand ever even be proud? The concept of brand pride to me should not even exist. This idea of being detached, being holier than thou or high and mighty. Why is this is not a person at the moment? It's a brand. It's a symbol. I cannot imagine why they wouldn't just say our. I mean, I'm saying this almost flippantly. Our bad. I mean, it's our terrible. Our terrible. But why on earth wouldn't they just be? This is one of those times, Carla, where I would just take the templatized. We certainly did not mean to offend. However, it appears that we have, and we truly, madly, and deeply apologize. Why the brand pride?
I think it's very ego-driven, and I think that's cultural, and it starts from the very top of an organization. And I think what happens in companies that are driven by ego rather than a purpose is things like this. They want to look great. They want to look like they're the knights in shining armor coming in and rescuing women and providing the scholarship and they want to stand out. They want to get attention, which they certainly have, but in a way that is so completely tone deaf that they're missing every opportunity that they could have. And the difference between ego is they're going to insist that they're right and to continue to double down as we've seen them do, versus purpose. And if this was developed by a leadership team that had instilled a sense of purpose in their organization, this front end message to the scholarship, which sounds like it is a great opportunity, would look completely different and certainly not ego driven.
I do love what you've said, which is this idea of in an ego driven versus a purpose driven organization. And I to even make that statement without being able to see into the boardroom, but you can still say that with a degree of certainty or confidence because you just don't do something like this and then don't clean it up without something clearly from a cultural standpoint being rotten to the core. This is one of those moldy whoppers, I should say.
Yes, exactly.
So let me ask you a question before we get into the incredible subject, and you are such an expert at it, of innovation, democratized innovation, I might add. Mm-hmm. What would I'm teaching a course at West Virginia University. This is perfect for me to I should give an extra credit assignment to my students today to say, and always ask them, what would you do if you were in charge? Well, what would you do right now, knowing full well that the window of opportunity to actually pull the tweet, at least early on, and say, heads will roll, off with their head, the king said. What would you do right now if you were advising them?
I would tell them to own their mistake. And this has to come from the top down. And to explain, our intention is to do exactly what the scholarship says, is to create a greater balance of men and women as chefs, because we do know that it's a very male-dominated profession. But this is, the food industry, service industry is something that we care about, and we're wanting to support more women in it. Our approach to it, however, was completely off base, and we apologize. I think you have to be honest and vulnerable and to show that you are human. Humans make mistakes, but truly compassionate and empathetic humans admit it when they do, and they do actively learn from their mistakes and they make a change. Now, I think they should continue to go ahead with the scholarship, but what they also need to do is to actually listen to their audience and understand why it was so tone deaf, and then make those necessary changes, whether it's on their staff, their agency partners, or whoever it is, to be able to have more sensitivity to their audience. Now, this is something that Antonio Lucio, I thought, did a tremendous job at when he was at HP, and to insist of having this diversity of the agencies who provided services to the company, and to look at rebalancing, the gender and diversity roles within his organization. Because when you bring people in with these different experiences, backgrounds, points of view, you are significantly less likely to make these incredible kind of missteps like Burger King just did.
By the way, I have to ask you a question. What's going on in the background? Is it a parrot?
Oh, yes. It's actually my parakeets downstairs, and I meant to cover them up. But yeah, it's just kind of makes you feel like you're in a little bit of a jungle, doesn't it, Joseph?
What is a parakeet cameo? Is it called a parakeet?
I think so. A cameo, maybe? Yeah.
By the way, speaking of colorful fellows, Tom Morris said, ego-driven or purpose-driven, nice Carlism. So I guess we've created the thing called a Carlism.
Oh, that's high praise coming from Tom.
I got a better Carlism, which you said, humans make mistakes, but compassionate humans admit them. That's a keeper. That's a Corona bite if I've ever heard one in my life. But it's so true. And by the way, just speaking of Antonio Lucio, he of course went on to Facebook, and then when I think Facebook was embroiled with several of those, of those inconsistencies of the things that he did when he was at HP, he has since left Facebook as well. So leadership occurs at the top, and it happens, I think, at an individual level. And it's been very interesting because, when we look at even in Clubhouse, right, and we think about brands on Clubhouse, it's not a king representing Burger King. It's not a clown representing McDonald's. It's the human beings that power the brand. And in this case, it would have been great in this case for that Burger King UK CEO to stand up, to show up, and then eventually to shut up, or at least shut them up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's not enough to say, like celebrities when they go into rehab, after doing something horrific, I'm going to, take care of this, and I'm going into rehab, and then you never hear anything again. And I think that's what, in my mind, makes Antonio one of the types of leaders who is so credible, is that then he consistently showed evidence and proof of how he was making what he said was important, like behavioral changes, outcomes. You could see actual evidence of how it was coming into play. And, we saw this a lot last year with Black Lives Matter and some of the different protests. There were a lot of companies that were jumping on the bandwagon, but if you looked under the hood, it was a completely different story. Now, some of them did step back and say, whoa, I didn't know how bad this was, at the everyday level, and particularly with some retail brands. The executives said they didn't know. Now, whether they did or not, who knows?
Right.
But there's a lot of those who said, we're going to do better. We're going to do different. And you know what? You haven't heard a peep from them since. And they just, keep it quiet and continue with business as usual and try and lay low. How much do you trust those brands? I think that's back to the ego-centered brand versus the purpose-centered brand. And I think there's others who have made a conscious choice to do better and to do different. And I think those are the ones who you do hear stories about, here's how we've changed. This is what's going on. And continue to show evidence that their heart was where their mouth was when all of this was going on. And, we're human. And to say that you always have to do everything right the first time is a little bit of a hypocrisy. I'd rather see somebody make a misstep and then show that they can evolve and, do better, rather than pretending we all have to be perfect from the first part, or to be a Burger King. I think that might turn into a verb very quickly. They Burger Kinged it because they were completely insensitive to start with, and it just got worse and worse as things go on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens these next few days. They're being incredibly ego-driven and stubborn, but we'll see how much this public backlash, if they ever do pay attention to it, and if it gets them to change their narrative.
And we're just getting word that Burger King UK has appointed Antonio Lucio as interim CEO. Sorry, let me. Looks like hold on. And we're just getting word, I had to correct the spelling, that Burger King UK has appointed Antonio Lucio as interim CEO. And I do realize that I'm putting my 2 fingers to my ear and there is nothing in my ear right now. But this is the breaking news that happens on Corona TV. But anyway,
you heard it here first, folks.
You did. It's completely not true, but you heard it here first. Carla, thank you for that conversation. And I mean, it was so current and topical on this day of all days. We had to discuss it. But what we really are here to discuss is, oh my God, book number 10. Let's celebrate with a beautiful wallpaper. Let's celebrate.
I love it.
Let's just, if I could tattoo the words Rethink Innovation on my body right now, I would. But congratulations on this book, number 10. Number 10.
Number 10. And the ebook came out last Tuesday, March 2nd. But the paperback and the audiobook, they're scheduled for June. So you still have time to pre-order, which I would love. But the ebook is out if you want to get an early sneak peek for it.
Well, I am going to paste in the comment thread a link that you can actually purchase this book. carlajohnson.co/rethink You don't have to rethink the book. You just have to buy the book, by the way.
Please.
So Carla, I mean, you look back, you've written 10, I've written 5. Let's just talk about writing, because there was something else that you said that really struck me. You spoke about this idea of the power and the love and the connection of what you call analog communications, writing letters with handwritten, with pen versus 3D printed or whatever. Talk a little bit about this love for writing, classic writing. Has that powered your ability to keep going and keep writing books? Because people generally don't have more than, 1 or 2 books in them. I mean, to even get to 5 it takes some doing. You got to be, something's not
Well, I think there's a blend of things there between writing books and analog communication. And, people say, how did you end up writing 10 books? Like what drove you to write them? And to be honest, I never had a drive to be an author necessarily, or much less to be a part of either write or be a part of 10 books. But I call myself the accidental author. And the reason is because I just continue to pursue things that interest me, that I'm curious about, and that I can dig into. And my first book was actually my master's thesis from university, because my master's degree is in history. And I had always worked in architecture and particularly historic preservation. So my first book was on a history of the Union Pacific train stations in Omaha, Nebraska, which, is about as sexy as you can get for a book. Still available in print, but it has been, I think it's in its 3rd or 4th round of printing. There are a lot of railroad fans out there, and I have found that a lot of them are marketers as well, which has been a fun connection, because somebody will buy another book and they'll say, "Oh, are you that Carla Johnson who also wrote the train book?" And so after I published it as my thesis, there was a publisher in Nebraska that specialized in railroad history and asked if they could publish it as a book. And, it couldn't have been easier than to have my first book published. I just said, yes. And what do you need from me? And they just needed all my files and images and documents, and they took care of the rest of it. And then that blend of, I've always worked in marketing and branding, and then having a history degree, and then writing a book. 20 years ago this year, I left my corporate job to start my own company. And a few years into my own company, Western Union was one of my big clients. And they wanted to write their first corporate history, which I thought was really interesting, because they were 155 years old. And it was a time they were splitting off to be their own independently owned company again. And that was a perfect blend for me of marketing and history. And so I wrote a couple more corporate histories, then, actually did some writing about this thing we call marketing. 5 years ago this month, Robert Rose and I released our book called Experiences, the 7th Era of Marketing. And that's been an interesting one, because there have been so many people, I think about the last 6 months, who've come forward, and I don't know if they're rereading it or reading it for the first time, but it seems to be a very timely book about creating these story-driven experiences. And I think that could be a little bit of a reflection of the time that we're in right now. And then contributing to 2 other books in 2018 and last year. And now this one, Rethink Innovation, which has actually taken me 5 years to write.
Wow, 5 years. It's funny because I think maybe that's the difference between some authors and others. Like I find myself going back and quoting Join the Conversation or something that I said in Join the Conversation, not to sell the book because I wouldn't recommend, I mean, they could if they wanted to buy a book from 2007, but that's not the point. The point is that it's still, I think, relevant. And I guess, they always say that an author looks back on their books like children. So if you ask them what their favorite is, they'll say, I love them all equally, but different. And I mean, I think like, look, if my second book was called, I don't know, MySpace for Dummies, I'm pretty sure I would never be referencing that book except to say, my God, how could I write a book called MySpace for Dummies? But it must be heartwarming for you to know that people go back to something that you wrote back when and demonstrate resilience and universality, right? That timelessness of great vision and content.
And I think that's probably a little bit of what makes my books relevant for a longer period of time. Part of it is that I'm looking at things from up here rather than down here. And to me, the big picture thinking doesn't change a tremendous amount over time. Now, the environment in which you apply that thinking absolutely does. The world's completely different from 2015 when Robert and I wrote Experiences than it is now. But the premises of how you execute those story-driven experiences, the process, back to processes and systems, and the framework that we developed for that book still absolutely apply. Now, the content that you run through them and the stories that come out the other end to create those experiences can be very different. But I think that's also what makes my 10 children in this form so fun, is because at the root of all of them is storytelling. And I think even with innovation, it's very much rooted in storytelling and inspiration and being able to present it in a way that gets people excited about it, believe in a future, believe in their role in it and the experience that's delivered. And I think when we talk about that analog part of things, for me, I've always been a writer since I was a kid. I still have ridiculously horrible stories that I wrote as a young child, or even cartoon strips when I tried to tell stories in that way, things like that. But I think there's such a beauty and I think simplicity of handwriting things that's, for me, is lost if I try to do everything on a computer. And when I get stuck, that's what I do. Is I take a notebook and I take a pen. I always have to have a pen that feels good on the paper. And I just start to write or draw or, jot things down, and then my mind gets to going. Or sometimes I write a letter to my daughter and I, she's a freshman in college. We write each other letters. I still write to my family. And it's that process of thinking differently in the analog world that I think is still really beautiful, that people underestimate the impact that it has in how they think about creativity or innovation or the work that they're producing. I think maybe Burger King could have used a lot if they did more analog writing as they developed this.
Well, if they'd taken the time to actually write out that tweet, they might have been like, what the hell was I thinking? Stupid king.
Exactly.
Bad king, evil king. Right. But just a quick follow-up on that for a second, because it strikes me that, when we look at our kids, when we look at the next generation, not only are they not handwriting, right? They're typing, but they're actually also doing it on the phone. So have you noticed how they'll be writing on the phone and they'll even be reading? And that's another crazy thing. They'll be like, at a function, at a wedding or bar mitzvah. And adults do it too, by the way. It's not just kids that are stupid. But it's like, and they're reading their speech off their phone. I'm like, that is so gross. It's gauche and gross. And it's like, surely you can do better than just this. But I would imagine that the small screen and the typing, and that's got to be an even limiting and more narrow, immersive experience compared to the expansive nature of the pen, the paper, and the analog approach?
It actually is, and there's neuroscience behind it. Just the fact that you're on a screen, it's very small. It does things to how your brain focuses and thinks. And this is a big reason why people for productivity or creativity or anything like that say, if you're sitting at your desk and on your computer for a long period of time, take a break and look far into the distance. Now, your optometrist will tell you this because you need it to exercise the muscles inside your, optic system. So you need glasses less, or maybe later in life versus what we're needing now. I mean, I've had optometrists say that the digital world is their biggest business development tool that ever could be. But there's a lot that happens to your brain, even like from a neuroscience and how it takes in information in the world and how it begins to think. Because if you're always close and you're always, thinking with blinders on, you can't think divergently. And that's essentially what just sitting on a screen, and even a smaller screen, and all of that does to how you think about things, ideas, connections. And when you are able to think more broadly, it's easier for you to think on your feet. So you don't have to stand in front of that room with your phone here as your crutch. You can actually speak more spontaneously and from the heart, and connect the dots to the thoughts that you want to have. And it feels much more sincere and present. And it's a much different experience, not only for the audience, but for the person who's speaking.
So let's chat about this book now, the book that you've taken 5 years to write, the book that you didn't write on an iPhone, et cetera. And Chip, he said, starting a book title with Rethink is gutsy, since it provides such an easy avenue for a lazy negative reviewer. But I would love for you to, you can address that if you like, but there is some, I think, there's big thinking, there's big rethinking in this book. This idea of saying, finding opportunity from innovation is everyone's business, that this is a democratization of innovation. And you've set out, I mean, this, I love it. It's like this mission, this adventure of yours to teach 1 million people how to become innovative thinkers by 2025. So maybe address that, this is a global rethink. This is a rethink at the highest level in terms of the democratization of it. So why is it important to democratize innovation, and how are you going to succeed at your mission to convert and upgrade 1 million thinkers to be rethinkers?
Well, I'll start out early childhood, and I was in probably 2nd grade, and it was the first time that I remember somebody in my life telling me it wasn't my place to raise my hand with an idea. And you and I know each other well enough, Joseph, that I'm always going to speak my mind. And so here I am, 2nd grade, and it was my teacher at the time who said, no, you need to be quiet. You need to essentially go sit in your place and let the people who have the ideas or are qualified to have the ideas, let's hear from them. Now, at the time, it was probably a 6th grader, but the message that came to me was that I wasn't the one who should be coming up with the ideas. And then as you like a lot of people, as you go through your career, you're still not that idea person. And, I pursued engineering for a couple of years when I first went to university, and the message was, well, you aren't actually an engineer, so you're not the right person. And then I went into marketing. Well, marketing's definitely not the right person to be innovative. And there were always these reasons why I wasn't the right person to be the innovator, except that I really knew that down in my heart I was. And it was so interesting that as I began to speak and teach and do workshops and things, I had so many people come up to me and say, I could never do what you do. I could never. And there were all of these excuses. And I kept saying, yes, you can. And there's this gift, there's this knowledge, there's this way of thinking that you have that's different from somebody else. And you need to bring your voice. It doesn't have to be to the entire world, but at least to the room that you're in. And people didn't identify themselves as innovators. And I think a big part of that is because of how we think of innovation. We think of innovation as the Steve Jobs and the Elon Musks and the Richard Bransons and people like that it's big, disruptive, expensive, time-consuming kind of innovation. But I had a statistic that I read when I was researching the book that said 90% of innovation happens outside of product and research and development. And I think that's really, really an important statistic for us to pay attention to. Because if you can look at the 90% of your organization that really can affect innovation in a much bigger way that goes beyond just the product or service that you sell, that is a phenomenal thing for you to understand. Now, I'm going to keep coming back to the Burger King thing. Burger King probably thought they were being incredibly innovative, but they horrifically missed the mark because they didn't even understand what innovation is. So part of the reason that I chose the title Rethink Innovation is because, one, I want people to rethink what it is. It doesn't have to be this big, huge, disruptive thing that turns, teams and companies upside down. It can be this democratization, that it can be little things consistently across the entire organization. That's actually what makes a company significantly more innovative than just that one product or service. The other thing is that we need to rethink it in terms of, how big does it have to be? And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be time consuming. It doesn't have to be super expensive. And I think that there's a lot that we need to look at the definition of it. And that really, when we start to look at that, there's so much more opportunity when we do rethink what definition we have of innovation and who's involved and actually how it's done. And that was really the purpose behind it, because I believe everybody in their heart is an innovator and really wants to bring that forth to their work. But I think their perception even is that they're not an innovator, and that's something that somebody else does in an organization, or somebody with a different degree or a different kind of company, or whatever all of these excuses are that we make up.
It sounds a lot like creativity, ideas, ideation, brainstorming, innovation. They're all joined at the hip, and it begins by being able to say, great ideas or innovative ideas can come from anyone, anywhere, any place, any time. But to kind of restate what you were saying, they don't have to be big. It could have been, what if we actually use Twitter or Instagram or Clubhouse as a way to recruit new chefs or, to our organization, specifically female, specifically on International Women's Day. Today could have been a recruitment exercise, and they could have, and that might not have necessarily been a big, hairy, audacious goal or idea, but it might have ended up being that. And I think maybe that's the realization I'm having, is you don't have to, for the most part, if I think about businesses, they always start up here, like big ideas, which then fizzles out and dilutes into nothing. The opposite, the rethink, is start small with a spark, with an insight, with an act of kindness, whatever the case may be, and let that gather momentum and maybe transcend and become something so much bigger over time.
Yeah, and I think with this kind of innovation, it's being specific about what's the problem that you're trying to solve. So, for Burger King, the problem they were trying to solve was to create a more gender balance of people who were going into the profession of being a chef. Now, I don't know where they got the inspiration for this idea, but I think that's what I break down in this process of the prolific innovators and the ones that are really successful, is that they're able to be much more observant of the world around them and see things that inspire them, emotionally connect with them, or just work in another setting, and be able to look at the essence behind why that worked. And in Burger King's case, I think it's an example of, they just tried to copy and paste something from another industry, clearly didn't work, and it failed, but they're still trying to, force that through the system. But if they would have looked at whatever it was that inspired them and the underlying patterns, like, was it about being unexpected? Was it about building a community? Was it about supporting a group that doesn't normally have a voice? It's understanding what makes the other idea or experience or situation successful, and taking those elements and relating that into the work that they're going to do. And I think that's a key element of being innovative, that we don't give credence to. And when you look at the process of what happens when we want something that's really innovative, and particularly for a big splash like International Women's Day, is that we gather people into the room and we say, okay, what ideas do you have? And everybody starts throwing out ideas, and they kind of clamp onto the first one that seems like a pretty decent idea. And then back to the ego thing, people don't really want to talk it through and really flesh it out. And in the research that I did, it's generally, you have to go through about the first 200 ideas until you start to come up with things that are truly different and unique and fresh and delightful. And I would say, based on the outcome of what Burger King did, maybe they got to 20, and then they put that into production. And it's an understanding, and I think this goes back to my love for analog communication, is that oftentimes you can't rush this process. Right. And when people try and do that, that's when they fail miserably, and they don't have any understanding why, but they're still very much emotionally attached to what it is that they've created, and they don't understand why it won't work. And that's what hurts the process. And I think the reputation of innovation, and who should do it and who shouldn't.
Well, I've just opened up the room in Clubhouse. We're going to go over there in a moment as soon as we're done with the show. But the first question I guess I'm going to ask you when we get in is, David Libby asked this question, which is, do companies need to hire a chief sensitivity officer? Hold your thought on that. There are too many comments coming in, because Tom said that would not be a bad idea, or that job seen as part of a chief culture officer, outward as well as inward looking. So let's hold that for a second. But Carla, one of the things that is new to Corona TV since episode number 16 is I come up with a quote. So a quote of the episode. And this is your quote today. And it's interesting because I had to look long and hard to find quotes on innovation by a woman. So that, go figure.
Right there. Right there.
Like Drucker and this and that. And I'm looking at 100, top 100 quotes coming from people. And I'm like, no, come on, seriously, where are the women at? So this is the quote that I found, which is, you have to look for inspiration. To do that, you have to be brave, curious, open, and excited. So do you know who said that? I'll give you a clue. It's a woman.
It sounds familiar, but I'm going to say Kathy Button-Bell.
So believe it or not, this is going to be a shock to you, but that quote was by a certain Carla Johnson.
On our episode 16?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't on episode 16, but I actually found there's a website, by the way. This is Carla Johnson Quotes.
I love it. Did my mother create it?
I don't know, but it's definitely you. It's definitely you, because it has your image. So thank you for that quote. Before we head on over to the after show, I'm going to ask you the Corona question this week. It's something that I heard Mitch Joel say, and I loved it. It's like he was talking about purpose. He was talking about like helping people in terms of like decide what they want to do in life. And I think he phrased it as, what do you think you can't stop doing? What's the one thing that you just can't get enough of or can't stop doing as a person, as a professional, as a human, however you want to answer that?
And I think that's such a great question. And I think it's a reflection of how smart Mitch Joel is to ask something like that, because I think it really gets at the root of who we are. And I think for me, it's teaching, educating. Originally, when I started down the path of studying history, I wanted to be a history professor. And then after I got my master's and started looking at my PhD and the salary range for a college professor versus the salary range for a marketer, even then I went down the marketing path because I thought there was more potential for it. And at the time I thought I was giving up on teaching, but what I really understood is that I still am a teacher. And that ties back into my desire to teach 1 million people how to become innovative thinkers, because I think there's a lot that if you approach it from this perspective of, I want to teach, I want to help, because what I want to do is extend this ability to be innovative thinkers, more critical thinkers, creative thinkers. I think that does a lot to really empower people to do the kind of work that they really deep down in their heart believe they can do and is part of their purpose and brings joy to the work that they do. So me, I think in my heart, the thing I can't stop doing is trying to teach.
Love it, love it. But teaching, but not at a teacher salary, because
exactly.
I can tell you something I mean, God bless him at West Virginia University where I'm teaching at the moment. But when I look at my hourly wage, I'll take the wage under minimum wage. It will be higher than what I'm. But you do it for the love, and it's what powers you, and it's the ability to inspire, to connect. Whether you're a public speaker, whether you're a consultant. What a perfect response. Carla Johnson, guest number 16. We need to go over to Clubhouse right now. You can follow Carla on the Twitter at Carla Johnson, on the Instagram at carlajohnson.co. I didn't even know you could do that. You can connect with her on LinkedIn. Please go and purchase her 10th book, Rethink Innovation, and connect with her on carlajohnson.co. Carla Johnson, it has been a pleasure. Come back at 2016. I'm kidding. You can come back anytime you want. Book number 11, come back. Let us leave you in the capable hands of Mr. Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. Let's head on over to the Zoom After Show.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.